and he doesn't know what to think anymore. And then he told me his brother was there, and so then we had to take him back to general population. And then I went back inside of the JIDIC, the Joint Interrogation and Debriefing Center, which is where all the MI guys work. And I tried to plead for this kid's case, that they would take him out of general population, and put him in the women and children section. And they refused because he was 16. And they said it was SOP that 16 and older goes in the general population. And I'm like, they're going to rape this kid. God only knows what else. But they didn't care. They just didn't care, and to this day I have no idea what happened.
Do you think that there was some sort of system where they used the prisoner's family, who was also there at the prison, that they tried to get across to the father and husband that, he better give a little more information or these people are going to suffer some more?
Well, that's what Megan Grainer told me. I testified about my interrogation with this boy, and I got an email from Megan Grainer, who, at the time Bobby Greb was Megan Amble, saying that this was common, that she saw it all the time. And then I tried to press her to get in touch with congressmen to let them know, but I didn't hear back from her after that. She was one of the so-called bad apples. She's gotten married to Charles Grainer. Well, I gave the information to my lawyer, and he passed it along to the congressman I was in contact with, and I can only assume they tried to get in contact with her.
I'm going to interrupt this interview to point out that after I recorded it, I emailed Sam Provance because I was having trouble researching Megan Grainer's contention. He okayed it for me to read his response, so here it is. No one knows about this but me, her, you, and my lawyer that I know of. She wrote me because we had been in limited contact, and she was thanking me for testifying, as well as telling me that it wasn't just the boy I knew that had been used in such a way by interrogators. Like I said, unfortunately, when I referred her to Congress, she went cold on me, as she has in the past. The email she sent me, along with every single email I ever had to or from anyone up to the spring of 2007, as well as all my writings, pictures, and video, was deleted when I returned home one day to find my hard drive completely wiped out and destroyed. Then I wrote Megan Grainer. Mrs. Grainer, this Thursday I'll be broadcasting my recent interview with Sam Provance. Could you elaborate on your emails to him about detainees' families frequently being held at Abu Ghraib in order to encourage the detainees' cooperation? Rob Turka. And she wrote back right away, Mr. Turka, I don't exactly know what I might have said in an email to Sam. There were many detainees who were wanted for questioning, but who were avoiding capture. Family members, including wives, children, parents, nieces, nephews, etc., were brought in at different times and held in confinement in order to encourage whatever person they were looking for at the time to turn himself in. When some of the MI, that's military intelligence, detainees were inmates and their families were also being held, interrogators used the knowledge of their family members' whereabouts against them in interrogation, i.e. they would bring a son in from the outdoor camp and put him in Tier 1A, then hood his father and drag him up to the front of the cell, then rip off the hood to show him his son, causing obvious stress and grief to the detainee, and then drag him off. They had previously ordered the son not to say anything to his father. Cooperation might earn them the chance to talk in front of a translator for a few minutes, or there might be threats or whatever else goes on if there was no cooperation. I didn't usually sit in on the interrogation itself. Hope it helps. Tell us how this unfolded with you becoming a whistleblower. How did you end up talking to the media?
Well, originally I had trusted that the military would investigate this thing thoroughly. Because normally when their hand is forced, they do, or at least that's what I thought. So, I was not going to speak to the media, but then a lot of weird things started happening really quickly. For instance, the General Taguba report, which was supposed to be secret, was leaked to the public and posted all over the internet, and I got people at work coming to me and saying, hey, don't you know your name's on the internet, and you're in this Abu Ghraib thing. And people had known I'd been there, but they didn't know that I was going to be a part of the investigation. And then there was an Article 32, which is like a pre-trial hearing for a court-martial for Specialist Megan Amble, who's now Megan Grainer. And I thought that hearing was supposed to be secret. That was done over the telephone. And the next day, it was being quoted in the news. And it was directly contrasting against what the prosecution was saying. And then I got interviewed by General Fay, who I didn't even know who he was until the interview, and I didn't even know there was a whole second investigation going on until I had met him. And I thought that he was going to want to talk to me about my statement, and I would be a witness in his investigation, just like I was for General Taguba's. But instead, he turned me into one of the criminals and was using my statement from General Taguba's investigation actually against me, especially where I had said that I was glad there was an investigation even going on. But the straw that broke the camel's back was when I got back to my unit and my company commander issued me a specific order saying I'm not allowed to talk about Abu Ghraib to anybody in any way. And he's like, don't ask me anything, don't talk to me, just read this and sign it. And then I'm asking him, well, what if I need to tell my mother what's what, so she doesn't come under the impression that I'm, one of the abusers in these photographs or something. And he's like, what did I tell you? Just read this and sign it. And even then, it wasn't until I learned that despite the fact that there were so many other people from my unit that were there, I was the only one getting this order. And these other guys, they were telling people all kinds of stuff that they did to detainees, and wild stuff. But after the scandal was made public, they changed all their stories and said, oh, no, that's not what we did, that's what the MPs were doing. And even they were supposed to speak to General Fay, but then at the last minute, their interviews with him were canceled. And then I was just like, okay, if nobody else is going to talk about this, if nobody else is going to say, anything, then I'll say something. Originally, I was hoping that other soldiers would say, okay, the cat's out of the bag, and be inspired, I guess, and go ahead and give their own interviews, even if anonymously. But they didn't. Immediately I had my clearance suspended. And I thought other soldiers would be like, wow, this guy's done this, obviously it means something. And I thought they would back me up because I'm a soldier like them. But they didn't. The leadership in my unit made it very clear that it would be very unpopular for them to have any kind of personal dealings with me. And at one point, they were even briefing that I was helping the insurgency.
Were you concerned about physical retaliation from people at Abu Ghraib?
Oh, absolutely. Because I was still there when the investigation began. And they made everybody report to this room, which is where the Army investigators were. And there was a questionnaire you had to fill out. And it was just basic yes or no questions. And it was more or less, do you know anything? And if you said no, then you just went back to work. But if you said yes, like I did, then they called you back. And when they called me back, they made sure that everybody where I worked knew that I was being called back. So the assumption by them was, oh, either he's telling on somebody or he's in big trouble. So even before I left,